alumni associ- oh, recording in progress. Our alumni associations, Leading with Voices series, where we get to hear from our outstanding alumni and university leaders on really interesting topics that we hope you will find just as interesting as we do. And so today I'm joined by Luis Reyes, who is a 1976 graduate from our Albert Cabell College, and perfect timing to have him talk about his new book, Viva Hollywood, as it is National Hispanic Heritage Month. So I want to give you a little bit of a background on our great alum, Luis, who is here with us today. And then we're going to kick it off with an overview of this new book, which is so timely. And we'll have some opportunity for everyone here on the Zoom to ask questions. So let me get a little bit of a background on Luis. He is considered an expert in understanding the Latino experience in film and television. As we progress through this conversation, you'll learn that he is the co-author and author of 5 books on this subject. His latest book, which we're here to talk about today, Viva Hollywood, shows us the legacy of Latin and Hispanic artists in American film. It details how this population went from stereotypes to on-screen personas, which we've seen in film, which is Latin lovers, banditos, gangsters, moving on to civil rights, the Chicano movement, and the work of activist artists like Edward James Olmos. We hope we have him joining us today to hear more about the changes in Hollywood that's influenced and paved the way by some of our current Hollywood Latin stars that we know, like Jennifer Lopez, personal favorite, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. So please give a warm Pacific welcome to Luis Reyes. And Luis, can you introduce yourself to this group and tell us a little bit about Pacific and what you've been doing?
Well, Pacific, University of the Pacific, Albert College, I received a scholarship to go to UOP, to go to Albert Cabell College, which at the time was the only bilingual college in the United States, Spanish and English. And half the student body was from Latin America, and the other half was North Americans who lived and resided in the United States. And teachers were from North America. Many of them had been diplomats, worked for different government agencies. And this unique relationship produced a unique college that came out of the Kennedy administration of bettering inter-American studies. Cabell, about Latin America and the United States and the relationship, and the student body there, where I got to interface with people from all over Latin America. Growing up in New York, I'm Puerto Rican, grew up in New York. I only had experienced my own people, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Cubans. And here I'm at Cabell, and I'm interfacing with Venezuelans, with people from Chile who look very Germanic, because many of them were emigres from Europe. So it was quite an experience. People from Mexico, all over Latin America. And so it was a great experience being at Pacific, and plus everything that Pacific had to offer. It was a great, great time. And what we didn't figure on, though, was that instead of us going to Latin America, which some of us did, most of Latin America came to the United States in the form of all the waves of immigration that started with many of the wars that developed, unfortunately, in Central America. So, and then the Mexican migration and people from all over. So people who studied and went to school at Cabell, really, we were kind of prepared to be able to deal with some of these situations that the United States has been facing ever since, in the role of immigration and in dealing with people from other cultures.
Now, Luis, we always enjoy hearing Pacific alumni who enjoy their Pacific experience. And it sounded like you had a very unique experience here at the university. Tell us a little bit before we get into your book and the inspiration behind it. What did you do when you graduated from Pacific? What was your career trajectory?
Well, my career trajectory, my degree was Inter-American Studies and Education. And then I left UOP when I graduated, and I stood on the front lawn, and I knew that it would never be as good as it was at UOP. Those 4 years were such a great experience. I knew it would never be that good again. I mean, there were great opportunities that happened afterwards, but those 4 years to me are like sacred at UOP. Anyway, I left Stockton. I went to Los Angeles to pursue a career in the entertainment industry because that's what I was interested in, even though I did have a degree in teaching, in education from the School of Education as well. So I got involved with this Hispanic organization called Nosotros that was founded by the actor Ricardo Montalban. And that organization was dedicated to improving the image of Latinos in films and also creating opportunities for Latinos in film. So that combination, I got to meet a lot of the older stars and actors. And then I've happened to grow up or come of age with many of the actors that have started their careers. So I started working with Edward James Olmos when he first started. I worked with Salma Hayek when she first started. I worked with Jennifer Lopez on her first movie. So I've seen their careers blossom.
Well, and that's a perfect segue into your book, which is Viva Hollywood, which if you haven't had the opportunity, it's a great book. You could get it right now on Amazon or Apple is how I got it. What inspired you to write this book? Because in reviewing the book, I think in the foreword, Jimmy Smith's right that you wanted to do a book like this before, but publishers were worried, would there be enough content for a book like this? So tell us what inspired you.
What inspired me was the fact that I was meeting all of these actors and actresses and people behind the scenes, but no one had ever documented their stories. And many of them, they were working people. They were artists, they were talented artists, but many of them took it as you and I would go to a factory to work or to an office. Their factory, their office was the movie studio. So when I asked them about their careers, sometimes they were like fascinated that anyone would even be interested in what they did. So I realized that there was no books, there was no authoritative book or information on these people's careers, and many of them were passing away. So I made it a point to start documenting their stories, documenting their histories, archiving their photos and books and reviews. And then I said to myself, oh my gosh, I've got all this material, and I put it together. And it took a while, took many years. And there were no books on the subject. There are plenty of books on Latin American cinema. There's plenty of books on Mexican cinema, but there were no books on the Latino American experience or the American Latino experience in Hollywood. So I had a hard time because people were saying, oh, a book on Latinos in Hollywood is going to be a very small book, They didn't realize the length and breadth of the participation of Latinos in Hollywood.
So Luis, tell us some of those stories that you have in your book, right? And so you were able to fill that book with the stories that you referenced. So let's start about having some of those that you want to share with us today.
Well, is it Tom Cruise or is it Tom Cruise? C-R-U-Z? Okay, is he Latino actor? Well, no, but these are some of the misconceptions. But he did play in a movie called Losing It, which was one of his first movies, which was about young people young teenagers, American teenagers, going down south of the border to Tijuana to do what young teenagers do in Tijuana, okay? And that was one of his first movies.
And so Catherine Zeta-Jones, tell us about her.
Yes, she's a beautiful actress, very talented, and many people take her for being Latina, but she's not. She's actually from Wales. She's English or British, and she may have Latino ancestry because, as we well know, as I learned from Dr. Walter Payne at UOP, in my own research, there was a Spanish Armada that crossed the English Channel, and I guess they ran into a storm, and many of them wound up in the British Isles, in Ireland and in Wales. So actually, if she probably did her ancestry, she probably does have some Spanish blood.
Well, these are some good examples of stories about some misconceptions regarding names and actresses and their backgrounds. What I liked about the book, especially, was the stories about Pacific. And again, I graduated from Pacific, a long time ago now for me. We didn't have any Hollywood films shot on campus. So talk about some of those stories. And we hope to have more films shot on campus in the future. But tell us about the stories in the book about Pacific.
Well, when I first learned about University of the Pacific, when I was in New York, and there was a representative there from UOP, a recruiting representative, he said, well, University of the Pacific is one of the oldest, probably the oldest established university. And he said, and it's in Stockton, California. Bingo! When he said Stockton, I said, oh my gosh, that's where the Big Valley, the television series, is set, okay? And I said, I know where Stockton is. So I was just floored with the movie and television connection right away, everything else. So yes, the Big Valley is set in Stockton. It was a very popular television series about a family in the Central Valley of California. And that's how I first learned about Stockton. And that show ran from 65 to 69. So UOP has its own cinematic history that was set in Stockton. So yes, that started it off with the.
So I would just like to say,
the Big Valley.
Luis, we have that same reaction. We feel about Stockton the way you did when you heard that it was in Stockton. Yes, we're excited about Stockton. Tell us a little bit more about some of the films shot on campus, and then we'll dive more into the book.
Yeah. Well, one of the featured in my book is Anthony Quinn, and Anthony Quinn started a film called RPM, which was Revolutions Per Minute. That was shot mostly in and around University of the Pacific campus in well, the film was released in 70s, so I imagine it was filmed around 1969.
Oh, beautiful.
And hello? Yes. And it featured Anthony Quinn as a teacher at University of the Pacific, and also Anne Margaret, who portrayed a student there. And it dealt with the whole campus unrest that was very popular during the Vietnam War and the hippie era in the late 60s. And it was how a teacher was confronting these situations. So it was filmed on the University campus, and Anthony Quinn is probably the most important Latino actor of his generation. I mean, he played every conceivable ethnicity. I mean, he is very well known, I guess, for his signature role in Zorba the Greek, where he played a Greek. And the Greek thought he was Greek. When he played an Arab, the Arabs thought he was Arab. When he played a Mexican, the Mexicans thought he was Mexican. I mean, he was a very unique talent, larger than life. All his characters were sort of underdogs, and they carried a humanity that was universal, that people could relate to.
Luis, before we go to this next other highlight, I'm curious because we hear about this more and more in mainstream media, the idea of an actor playing a different ethnicity. You referenced Anthony Quinn, played all kinds of different ethnicities. How do you view that in your work and your research when other actors of non-Hispanic descent play Hispanics? What has been that portrayal and what has been the thoughts behind it?
Well, I think an actor is an actor and should be allowed to play any role that he could conceivably and believably his talents allow for him to play, and that audiences believe as well. But what has happened is for a long time, movies are a reflection of society, and they reflect the way the society sees its values and its people in society and their biases. And it's the Hollywood film industry tends to typecast people. So I believe that nowadays things are more open, but still, I mean, if audiences want to, first of all, opportunities were very limited. Latinos had more opportunities because they could go within a scope, as Anthony Quinn did. But there were limitations. They weren't allowed to play mainstream roles. And many times the Latino roles that were given to them were stereotypical, and they had to go beyond the stereotype. But it is a motion picture business as well as an art form. So I believe if audiences today want to see real Native American actors playing Native American roles, great. That's what the commerce demands. That's what audiences demand. If they want to see Latinos playing Latinos, that's great, or any other ethnicity, that is great. And it opens up opportunity for performers of those backgrounds. So I think that is a great, but we also want it the other way too, where Latinos don't necessarily have to play Latino roles. One of the things that I think I have coming up here later is that we have a beautiful Latina actress, Ana de Armas, is now playing Marilyn Monroe, probably the most iconic Hollywood star. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have another woman by the name of Jay Hernandez, who is playing Magnum PI. I mean, he's just a brown guy playing Magnum. They don't try to make him. They don't try to make him Latino. They don't try to make him Hawaiian. He's just an actor playing a role, as Tom Selleck was an actor playing a role on Magnum. Now it's Jay Hernandez. So you
are going a little ahead of us, so we're going to get there. But I just thought I'd ask the question in the time frame. But we're going to catch up to how that evolution happened. But let's do one more University of Pacific highlight with some of the films that were shot here, which is High Time. High Time.
Yes, well, it's like, well, let's deal with the top picture, which was a film called High Time with a legendary actor, a singer, Bing Crosby. How many people remember him today as the guy who sings the Christmas song with David, okay? But so the film was High Time, and it was about a successful businessman who never went to college. And he decides that he wants to go to college because he never had a college education. So he goes back to college, and the college he goes to is University of the Pacific. So, and that was a very popular film. Quite a bit was shot on campus, and that was way back in 1960. One of the most famous actresses that have come out of UOP is Janet Leigh, who co-starred with Charlton Heston in a film that takes place on the border, and it's a classic film directed by and starring Orson Welles, with Touch of Evil. And then UOP also was the college where Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark taught. And the establishing shot is of UOP. And it's Marshall College in the motion picture. So UOP has a very definite, and there were as well, but those are the main big motion pictures.
And before we go on to a little bit, Shannon, of the actors, so if you're reading Viva Hollywood, the story of the Latinx experience, the evolution, is described in detail in the book, and we're going to go through some of the actors that are in the book as some examples that Luis will go into. But at the top of the show, I referenced that we are trying to get Hollywood film shot back up here on campus. And so we've developed a little sizzle reel. I guess, Luis, you know the word sizzle, the Hollywood term, a little trailer for ourselves to get pictures shot back up here. But it's a concerted effort from our president and our board. So I just wanted to plug that. Hopefully we'll have some pictures shot here in 2022 or 23 that we could show in a different element. So we're going to transition, everybody. We're going to transition from our UOP stories that are in the book to really the history of Latinx in film. And Luis is going to walk us through some actors to show how that portrayal's evolved. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So our first person we have here is Antonio Marino from the 1920s. Luis, tell us about him.
Antonio Moreno was a young Spanish gentleman who came to study in the US, and he always loved movies and theater. And he was one of the first actors at Biograph Company, which was back east. And he started his career back east. And he was a leading man in many, many films in the silent period. And then he transitioned into sound films. And in sound films, he became a character actor, a supporting player. And his career goes way up until the late 1950s. One of his best known film roles is he played the professor searching for the creature from the Black Lagoon in Creature from the Black Lagoon. He was the one that found the Gill Man, okay? And he later had an important supporting role in the classic film The Searchers, which you are seeing below. He played the Mexican girl that led John Wayne, who was searching for his abducted niece, and he leads John Wayne to the Comanche chief. So Antonio Moreno worked right into the late 50s until he died. So that's a presentation where you can see Latinos have been involved in the Hollywood film industry since its inception.
We have Leo Carrillo State Beach and Park.
Yeah, a lot of people know the name Leo Carrillo from the beach that is near here in Santa Monica. But next slide, please. Everybody knows the name Leo Carrillo Beach, but they don't know who Leo Carrillo is. Now you're going to find out who Leo Carrillo is. Can we have next slide? Okay. Leo Carrillo State Beach and Park. Leo Carrillo was a very famous actor who was of direct Spanish and Mexican descent. He was born in an adobe in Olvera Street in downtown Los Angeles. Most people know him at all today, if you're older, as Pancho in the Cisco Kid series. And, but he was born in 1880. So he worked on the stage, he worked in silent films, he worked in sound films. He was probably the most important Mexican-American of his day. He participated in parades all up and down the state. Some of his most famous films was Phantom of the Opera, the Technicolor version that was done in the early 40s. He starred in many, many films and also co-starred as a character actor, but he is best known for his role as Pancho in the Cisco Kid series. And even though, and he was also a visionary because they filmed the Cisco Kid series in 1950 in color.
Wow.
He knew intrinsically that very popular in the future, color television. So it was shown in black and white because nobody had color TVs in the 1950s. But once color TVs were introduced in 1959, they started running the episodes in color. Okay.
Luis, so we transitioned from Leo to Rita Moreno, who a lot of us know, who is an EGOT award recipient.
Yes, because she's won an Emmy, a Grammy, and an Oscar, okay, which is the awards that the most important, and a Tony for Broadway theater, which are the 4 most important awards a performer can earn. And there's only a few women, I think just Rita and Barbara Streisand, who hold similar awards. And Rita won her award, her Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for West Side Story in 1961. And she also appeared in the new West Side Story version by Spielberg last year in 2021. She's 90 years old and she's still working. So amazing, amazing career that started off when in 1949 when she was just a young woman. Next slide. Next slide.
We have some actors and directors here.
Yeah. Next slide, please. It's not coming up. I'm still on Rita.
Is it this one, the Ariana DeBose, who also was in West Side Story?
Ariana DeBose. It's not on screen. Ariana DeBose won the Academy Award last year for the role that Rita Moreno created as Anita in West Side Story. So she is symbolic of the new generation. Okay, that is Ariana DeBose as Best Supporting Actress, Oscar winner for West Side Story, in the same role that Rita Moreno won in 1961.
Which, Luis, has to be pretty unique,
slide.
Right? That you have 2 actors playing the same role that many decades later, and they have the same result, right? Which is to win an Oscar, which is, I think, kind of interesting. Our next slide here that we have, Luis, and Luis, where did you go on my screen? Are you here? We're having some technical difficulties. Shannon, did he?
I think we lost his internet connection. Let me see if I can get him back really quickly.
Awesome. Well, when this happens, we keep going. And so while we get Luis back on, I'm going to just transition to his next discussion, which was when we look at how film has evolved, how actors and directors also had their place within the film industry. So he talks about, in the book, Danny Trejo and Robert Rodriguez, directors that do a lot of current Hollywood films. Robert Rodriguez, if you're a parent like I am, he did the Spy Kids movies. So those Spy Kids movies that you have seen, and a lot of other really interesting films, but tends to always have a diverse cast in mind. So very much aligned with what Luis is discussing in his book. We, of course, know Salma Hayek, which, if you know our one of our alums, Jose Hernandez, who is was an astronaut. He was one of our first astronauts from Pacific, or the first Mexican-American astronauts. And his life story is being turned into a feature film on Amazon called A Million Miles Away. And his #1 choice to play his wife, Adela, was Salma Hayek. It didn't happen, but that was the #1 choice. So Salma Hayek, we know, and Antonio Banderas, lead actors, right? And so I think when you look at the progression of Hispanic actors in film, it was very much supporting roles. And as we progressed into more current, they were having leading roles, right? More leading roles and more decision-making behind the scenes.
We got Luis back. Luis, can you hear us?
Yes.
Luis, I tried to be you. I tried to be you for a minute. I think I did okay. Luis, we're on actors and directors, right?
Listening to Scott.
Yes. So I just gave a little bit of background on these folks, but did you have anything else you wanted to add to this slide on actors and directors?
Yes. Yeah. Robert Rodriguez is probably the most important American Latino director working today. As you can see, he has influenced the careers of many people, including Danny Trejo, as you can see in the photo. And to me, Danny Trejo is almost like the Mexican-American Charles Bronson, okay? And so he has influenced many people's careers. Reynaldo Marcus Green is a young director who was Academy Award nominated for his film King Richard with Will Smith. And now Reynaldo Marcus, who is half Puerto Rican and half African American, he is directing a film on the Bob Marley. So we can see the progression. And two of the people that Robert Rodriguez influenced was Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas, because the studios did not want Salma Hayek for the film Desperado. And Robert Rodriguez insisted on her. I mean, she was a well-known actress in Mexico and was working her way up in small roles in American films. But this role in this film helped to launch her career in Hollywood. And Antonio Banderas, who was a very good-looking guy, had worked in Spanish films. When he came to the United States, he was kind of pegged as a Latin lover. And Robert Rodriguez turned that around and really turned him into an action hero as El Mariachi in Desperado. So Latinos now are starting to define their own image within the American experience. It's not someone else's idea of who we are. It is who we are as we are expressing ourselves as part of the American experience. As you, Scott, so rightly said, with Jose Hernandez, who is his life story is being brought to the screen. And those are very positive images. There's nothing wrong with stereotypes, except that if that's all you see, it becomes a problem when there's no balance. So it's very important, and also that we can start defining ourselves within the Hollywood experience as well, as opposed to somebody else's idea of who we are.
Luis, you said that way better than me, so thank you for coming back on the Zoom. We go to Mi Familia.
Yes, that movie was done by Gregory Nava. And again, it's about Latinos defining their own image within the American experience, and also giving people opportunity to portray themselves with nuance, with character and depth, and give people an opportunity to see the experience of an American family that is to be an immigrant family, and through the years and what happens to them, and some of the harshness of what happens to an immigrant, positive things that happen, as well as some of the tragic things that happen, and some of the tragedy that comes out of trauma that comes out of racial discrimination, trauma that comes out of brutality, trauma that comes out of poverty. So these movies illustrate those kinds of themes that are not generally seen in motion pictures, or you just see one version of it. You don't see the complete picture.
Well, I think, Luis, we have a few minutes left, but before we have questions, and I think it's interesting, the point that you made, that now Hispanic directors and storytellers are telling their own story, to your point, that we would not have heard otherwise. And so we progress here now then to an actress that is doing a little bit different, as you referenced at the top of the hour, right? portraying Hispanic characters, but also very, very famous Caucasian characters like Marilyn Monroe. So tell us a little bit about Ana.
Yeah, Ana de Armas, very talented actress. She's a rising star. She made her debut in Knives Out, and she's been going strong ever since. She is playing the most iconic Hollywood star that you can conceive of, which was Marilyn Monroe. So she is an incredible talent. I think debuts today on Netflix. And some people say that she may even be nominated for an Oscar. So I think those are some of the advancements that we are seeing. The film In the Heights, as we just noticed the photograph on the bottom by Lin-Manuel Miranda. There's a number of talented Latino in front of the screen, but behind the screen as well. And it was directed Asian American, so who understood John Chung's. So, you know, we don't vacuum. We all work together as creators, as artists. So we bring our talents to the forefront and create a new American Hollywood cinema that reflects.
Luis, you're cutting out a little bit there. So can you hear us? Okay, as Luis is gonna get back at his internet, we're just gonna go over one more slide and then we have questions because we wanna make sure we have Luis on for those questions. One of the things that he talks about in his book, again, is if we look at the evolution of the actors creating their own content with their backgrounds, Hispanic backgrounds. So he talks about Eva Longoria, who, if you remember, Desperate Housewives is the TV show she was on, but also the creator of a lot of interesting content as a director, actress, and a producer. Ezra Gonzalez. Luis, you're back on. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Good, because I try to be you and I'm not very good at it. But I was on this last slide before we get to questions. Luis, do you want to go over this last slide?
Okay, okay. Oh, these are just some of the Latinos that are working in films today. There's Eiza Gonzalez on the top. She is in Ambulance, action movie. Next is Eva Longoria, who's well known as a television actress. She's also an producer, and now she's directing. She's been directing a number of years, which has a new movie coming out this year. And it's a new movie that's coming out next year, and it's called Hot, which is the story of the janitor shows. So that will be coming out next year, and I have a feeling that movie will be as big as La Bamba or Selena, because it deals with the immigrant experience, and it also deals with the American dream. Okay, and if someone having success, I think we're tired of seeing the poor, low, and going through the trials and tribulations. People want to see positive, uplifting stories. Oh, and down below we have Jay Hernandez and Perdita Weeks. Magnum is before. Jay Hernandez is just a brown guy playing Magnum as, Tom Selleck would be playing Magnum. They don't make him Latino, they make him Hawaiian. He's just an actor playing a role. And last but not least is Oscar Isaac, who's of Guatemalan background. And he's portrayed in several Star Wars movies and several films. And he's a very, very good actor, and he's a lead man right now.
Great. And if you're a Marvel person, I think he starred in Moon Knight. also, which was a great series on
Yes,
Disney+.
on television, yes.
Yep. So,
but I just wanted to say that my book really deals with theatrical motion pictures and classic movies. It does not deal with television for the most part, unless there's a crossover. But otherwise, it basically focuses on theatrical motion pictures and people who worked in theatrical motion pictures.
Luis, I think that you gave our group a high-level overview of Viva Hollywood. Run out and get it. It's a great book. And I think just from what we've heard from Luis, we'll have a time for some questions. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to just raise your little hand in your Zoom room, or even if you want to just raise your hand, I will go back to my high school teacher days and I'll call on you. But when I do call on you, please say your name and your class year if you happen to be an alum. So does anybody have some questions for Luis? Don't be shy. Don't be shy on here, because I will call on you. I will do that.
All right.
Okay, I'm looking at here, because we're all friends here, you know. I'm looking at, is it Cecilia Williams? You happen to be the first person on my Zoom screen. And so can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself and say your class year and a question that you might have. And then I go, oh, Juan unmuted himself. Juan, you're next. You're next, Juan. Cecilia, no, you go first. Ladies first. Give us your class year.
Let's see, I'm Albert Covell College, class of 76 with Louis. And
all right, Cecilia, all right, Covelliana.
But Juan Luna was there also, and I also know Craig and Dana. And well, I actually, of course, know Kelly and Linda, I know also. And Kevin Riley, do I know? Yes, I know Kevin. I'm trying to see. And I do know, I want to say it right, Marcia. How do you say your name? Is it Marcia?
It's Marcia.
Let's see, I'm trying to think, is there anybody else I know here? I think I've met you too, Scott, before. So know a lot of people. But anyway, and Louis did such a great job describing Albert Covell College. It changed, most of us that went there, it changed our lives forever. And we're just dyed in the wool, Albert Covell people. I can't wait to get your book, Louis. And I'm so sorry I missed the Turner Classic presentation. We had a family thing and I wasn't able to go. So I wasn't about to miss today, and I'm happy to be here. I don't have any questions. I just can't wait to get the book. And I will see you next month, you and Martha.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Cecilia, thank you. Because you were telling the story, encouraged our Juan to have a question. Juan, tell us your class year. I'm assuming, is it 1976 too?
No, I'm a class of 1974.
Okay.
And it's a pleasure to be here. It's really great to see everybody. Congratulations.
Juan Luna. Juan Luna, Johnny Moon. All right.
Nice to say hello to everybody. And so just to, for the sake of time, Luisito, what are the next steps? Are you working in collaboration with some of these actors, or are you more of an outsider and looking into how this is evolving? Next steps.
Oh, no, I've worked with most of the actors in the book, especially the recent ones. I mean, I worked with Salma Hayek when she first came to Los Angeles. I was probably the only one that knew who she was within the industry. I worked with Jennifer Lopez on her first movie and actually on her first TV series. Edward James Olmos, I worked with him on Zoot Suit. Luis Valdez, the director of Zoot Suit, the father of Chicano's cinema and Chicano theater. I've worked with so many people over the years. Jimmy Smits, who wrote the introduction for my book. I've worked in Mexico on 10 films. So I've really brought my inter-American experience. I mean, I was one of the few public relations people in Hollywood that spoke Spanish and that was able to work in Mexico because I understood the people and the culture and the business practices. So what I learned at Covell certainly helped me in my future career. So, yes, my career reflects the career of many of the established stars of today. So,
congratulations, Luisito. Congratulations. Very proud of you.
Thank you. And I came at the right time. I was also able to meet some of the older stars like Ricardo Montalban, who was a good friend. So yes, I came at a good way of time. And what I learned at Covell, certainly helped.
Thank you, Juan, for that question. We have a few questions in the chat. So I've been texted. Oh, Scott, look in the chat. So I'm going to look in the chat. Is it Dana? Am I saying your right name? Dana? Dana has 2 questions for you, and I'm going to start with the latter. Is there anything of note in the movie A Day Without Mexicans? Anything else about the Latino experience in U.S. films? Great questions.
New movies?
No, it's not a new movie. It's not a new movie, Luis. But I thought it was interesting, and I don't find it on Netflix. And it is a movie that basically gives you a sense of how important the Mexicano is in the United States, and what life would be like even one day without the Mexican population around us. It's a comedy, but it does bring to light, what a predicament we'd all be in if we did not have our Latino Mexican population around us.
And Dana, did you say that was on Netflix?
I don't think it's on Netflix. I think I've looked for it there.
Okay.
So somehow it came across. It came to my attention, but I'm not sure when I saw it.
Are you talking about A Day Without a Mexican?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was an independent film that was done by Sergio Arrau, who is the son. He's a cartoonist, artist, and his wife, Araceli Arizmendi. And it was an independent film that they did through a Mexican film company. I think it was Televisa. And it got great response, but it was not a Hollywood film. Mm-hmm. My book deals with just Hollywood cinema, not necessarily Spanish films or films from Mexico, unless they were done by Mexican filmmakers like Inarritu, or Guillermo del Toro, some of the new people that have arrived and made an impact in Hollywood. But yes, that's a very good film. It's an independent film, but it's a very good film. A Day Without a Mexican, yes.
Yes, and we just put it in the chat. So if you want to look more about that film, it's in the chat. Because we're quick like that. We're like IMBD here at Pacific. We'll find that.
All right.
So, Luis, I want to just have the second question in there that Dana asked us. Anything else you want to share about in your history and your research about the Latino experience in film that you haven't touched on already?
No, I think we've covered the stereotypes. We've covered the let's talk about very quickly some of the behind the scenes people. John Alonzo won an Oscar. He is from Texas, Mexican American. He won an Oscar nomination for his work on the classic film Chinatown, with Jack Nicholson. We also have a gentleman by the name of Marcel Delgado, and then one of the people who was instrumental in creating the image of Marilyn Monroe. Her on-screen image was a gentleman by the name of William Travia, who was of Mexican descent. He was born on Catalina Island, right off the coast of California. And he was instrumental in creating that white dress that became famous in the 7-Year Itch. And that's a picture of Travia dressing during a wardrobe test for one of Marilyn's films. And Travia was also responsible for making men look good too in period wardrobe. And he made Errol Flynn look extremely well and won an Oscar for it, for The Adventures of Don Juan, as you can see in the photograph. So there was a lot of behind the scenes talent as well. You have people, well, Carmen Miranda, who became the woman in the Tutti Frutti hat. Actually, she's still, you can still see her image. Her image was so impactful that when you buy a banana, Chiquita banana, that Chiquita banana image was inspired by Carmen Miranda. And she was Portuguese, but she helped to popularize the samba, which came from the African Brazilian heritage. Behind the scenes, Marcel Delgado, who created the model that looked huge in creating the illusion for the original 1933 King Kong.
Oh my God.
Okay, he was the chief model maker on the film, Marcel Delgado. He was an art student, and Willis O'Brien, who created the concept for King Kong and what they call stop motion animation. He saw Marcel in the art school and took him right out of the art school and put him to work at the studio.
So, Luis, thank you for that additional information on behind the scenes, right? Just as much impact behind the scenes with Hispanic artists. We have another question, which is from Marie, and I see you right there, Marie, on the Zoom. Luis, are you still a photographer? I remember you always had the camera ready at Cavell, and we won't ask for any of the pictures from that time period during college, but are you still a photographer?
No, I had an issue with, I lost a retina on my eye, on my right eye. So I still have a feel for photography, and I can tell or work with a photographer, but I don't take as many pictures. I still have a lot of pictures. Some I don't want to show because maybe incriminating some Covelianos, okay? So anyway, to make the long story short, I still collect a lot of photos. That's how I was able to do the book, was being able to collect a lot of photos. And I'll tell you a quick story dealing with eyesight. We had a wonderful, wonderful young man from Mexico, okay, was Ramon, and he was blind. And he once asked me, he said, Luis, can you help me out? I need some help in a particular class that we were in. And I said, sure, Ramon. He was from Mexico.
Oh, doesn't this happen on a Zoom? You get into the story and then it cuts out a little bit. And so we'll see if, Luis, can you hear us again? You're on mute now. Again, something we always say now on a Zoom, you're on mute now. Luis.
Can you hear me now?
We can't. And so you cut off,
okay,
though, right?
So,
it was very suspenseful. Keep going.
Okay, so Ramon, this is a quick story about Coveliano. Ramon, who was from Mexico, who was blind, okay, he took all of his classes. He had assistants from Braille. Anyway, we were in a class together. He asked me to help him on a particular assignment. And he asked me to come to his room in Casa Jackson. And I said, no problem, I'll see you at the end of the day. And so I come over to his room and I knock on the door. He opens the door to his room. And me, like an idiot, the first thing I said, because even though you see somebody who's disabled, you kind of get used to it and you don't think anything of it. Well, when he opened the door to his room, he was sitting in the dark. All the lights were out. And me, as an idiot, first said to him, Ramon, what are you doing sitting in the dark? And then I realized, oh, and he just laughed. Okay. those are one of the cute incidents at Covell. But anyway, we studied together and we were both able to pass the class.
Well, Luis, I think we could talk to you and have more questions on another time. You brought us a very fascinating topic today. And again, it's really aligned with our National Hispanic Heritage Month. And I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us your experience at Pacific.
Yeah, I would like to say, Scott, I would like to say one quick thing for Kelly and everyone involved. One of the things I learned about this book is we have to document our history. And I think everybody here now who's a Coveliano, I think maybe it's time for us to do maybe a small book or something on the Covell experience. Okay, document what Covell meant to us here at UOP. I think a book that documents that history from our point of view. Unfortunately, most of the teachers have passed on, but I think if we can put our memories together, our photographs together, I think it would make a wonderful book for not only the university, but for everyone. I mean, because it's a larger story here, not just Covell. It reflects the world that we're living in, what we've gone through in the last 60 years. So anyway, I'm throwing that out there. Maybe I can spearhead it. Maybe I'm the one to do it. I don't know, but it's going to take everyone's participation. But I think it's something important that maybe we need to do.
Well, I think agreed. And I think it's a history that would be great for our current students to also read about and learn, because at Pacific, as we've evolved as a university, we want to remember our legacy and preserve it. And so I think I see in the chat here a video documentary and book. So that was from Juan. So I think, Juan, we have our next Zoom where we're going to document and learn more about our Covell experience here. Luis, again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your new book, Viva Hollywood. Let's all get it and support Luis. It is a pleasure always to have a conversation with our wonderful alumni. So thank you everybody for coming here today. Again, I am the Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations. I'm humbled to serve in this position, and I'd be remiss, and Kelly would get upset at me if I didn't remind you that come back. Pacific is still your home. We have our homecoming and family weekend soon, October 14th through 16th on the Stockton campus. We have over 30 events to engage with alumni, faculty, emeriti faculty, and our current students. So there's a QR code there if you want to scan it. It's on our website. You've probably gotten many emails about it. Please respond to them. And we hope to see you again on future virtual Zooms, and hope that you're able to come back to campus for homecoming in a couple of weeks. Thank you everybody for coming, and have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you.